Hey Kings of Dragons, Dragon King 551 here. We are back with college football playoff news. So as I've said in those previous videos, Florida State is not in. Now, I'm going to use some logic from the previous years and stuff, and I'm also going to take logic from the BCS format and explain my reasoning behind this stuff, and this is why I'm so sick and tired of strength of schedule and resume. I think that it works okay in March Madness, but it doesn't work well. Sorry, I said work well in the college football playoff. Originally, you had a BCS format where it was a computer format where you determined which team would play in the BCS National Championship, basically, format and stuff. And the first year, obviously, it made Michigan and Nebraska have a split national championship. Now, most fans would say that Michigan fans claim it more than Nebraska fans. I've never really seen a Nebraska fan claim that championship. The other problem that I have is there's been four examples where teams have gotten in and there is some corruption going on in this format and committee, and the committee needs to be investigated in and stuff with SEC bias. Now, they did it right this year for the most part, but again, I hate strength of schedule for college football because ultimately, I don't care if you're playing 5 bum teams and stuff. You play who's on your schedule. You schedule those games 10 years in advance. So if, let's say hypothetically, Alabama hasn't really fallen off the radar yet. But let's say hypothetically, Michigan were to schedule Alabama, Georgia, and some other tough teams 10 years in advance, okay? Now, two things can happen. Two things can be right at the same time. First off, 10 years in advance could be they're a really bad team. Now, 10 years later, they're a really good team and Michigan gets destroyed by them, or something along the line where Michigan actually makes a close game and wins those games, even though they're two really good teams and stuff. The other thing here is 10 years later, prior to that 10 year in advance, the team can fall off. So that's not your fault that the team is bad. You already scheduled them and stuff. You got to play who's on your schedule. So I'm not going to penalize Florida State even though they beat LSU. Why? Because they lost a quarterback? Okay, so are you going to penalize Michigan, which they didn't, because we lost one of our starting offensive linemen, Zach Zinter and stuff? So you're going to penalize him? No, you're not going to penalize Zach Zinter because of that strength of schedule or anything like that, because we have 2 top 10 wins. Well, actually 3 now top 25 wins, beating Iowa and stuff at 16. But the problem here is I just don't understand this strength of schedule BS anymore. I think that it's ridiculous because I don't care which teams you beat, you should still allow that 13-0 team in. And they have 3 different years they effed up. The first year that the college football playoff comes in, TCU gets snubbed and they should have been into the college football playoff. In 2017, and I'm sorry to say this because I think Nick Saban's a great coach nonetheless, he goes crybaby and starts flipping out because he loses to Auburn and doesn't get to play in the SEC championship to represent and play, I think, against Georgia, was it? And they get into the playoff and win the national championship in that year or something. And now, obviously, I think the years are messed up. I think it was 2016, 2017, whatever. The point is that they get in, even though they're not represented in their conference championship, which is sad because it's like, if you win your conference championship, most likely you'll be in, but if you win your whole season, you will be in, right? So the conference championship gets put in, and ultimately the whole thing happens, and then Bama gets put into the national championship game and gets put into the college football playoff and stuff. They win their playoff semifinal and get put into the national championship, which is unfair because ultimately they didn't win their conference championship and they shouldn't have been represented or should have been in the conference championship. So with that being said, I don't really understand why they were there to begin with, and they shouldn't have been represented or into the college football playoff because of that. Now, the next year, 2022, TCU gets in, where they don't penalize them for losing in their to a 9-3 Kansas State team and they lose to TCU, and TCU loses out. Now, USC, obviously, that's a different story why Ohio State got in, because they lost 2 games and they lost to the same team twice. And I get it that there were no other undefeated, so you had to allow Ohio State in. However, and those were the top 4 teams. Now, I get it that they didn't want a Cincinnati situation where Bama beat Cincinnati and they went to go play, and Georgia beat Michigan, and they went to play each other in 2021. And then next year, Michigan lost to TCU in a close one, and Georgia won in a close one, and then Georgia went on to trounce TCU 65-7 and stuff. And I understand where the committee was just like, we don't want that another blowout. But you can't tell me that Florida State was not deserving of it because they lost their quarterback. If you're telling me that teams should be out because they're 13-0, but they lost their quarterback because they were down to the 3rd string quarterback because they were playing a pitiful, piss poor performance, I personally think that you should go out and complain to the committee. You should have lawyers and other people and try to take this to court as a legitimate court case, problematic thing, because I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's somewhat true. You should see if there is actually corruption in it. With that being said, I'm going to take some stuff from the college football playoff and talk about how it was an unfair treaty in the BCS format and how it applies to this and stuff. I will be back. And with that being said, so give me 1 sec. I'll be back, and we'll talk about the college football playoff and all of that. Okay, and we're back. So there's also other factors where Georgia couldn't get in, but they got knocked off by the 8 team, and the 8 team shouldn't have been able to jump that many spots. Now, there's also this incentive where the NCAA is like, oh, it's all about money and money and money. So let's try getting Bama in because it's going to be a better matchup between Michigan and Bama and stuff versus Michigan potentially trouncing Florida State. And I'm just like, what? Like, as a fan, I would love Florida State to be in because they're 13-0. But in my heart, I predict that because they don't have that scrambling factor of Travis Hunter, they would get trounced by Michigan. And that's just how I feel. With that being said, here is the statement by Coach Norvell, what he said. And this is why I think I totally agree with him and sympathize with him. I am disgusted and infuriated with the committee's decision today to have what was earned on the field taken away because a small group of people decided they knew better than the results of the games. Norvell said, "What is the point of playing games? Do you tell players it is okay to quit if someone goes down? Do you not play a senior on senior day for fear of an injury? Where is the motivation to schedule challenging non-conference games? We are not only an undefeated Power 5 conference champion, but we also played 2 Power 5 non-conference games away from home and won both of them. I don't understand how we are supposed to think that this is an acceptable way to evaluate a team." And he's right, because the strength of schedule thing is to counteract your debate. We're saying, I hate strength of schedule, it's ridiculous and stuff, because it's not your fault that these teams were supposed to be good 10 years ago, and now 10 years later, they are a bad team or something when you scheduled it, or 5 years in advance, and now in 2025, when you play TCU or Texas and stuff, they're completely a terrible team. Not your fault that happened where your team continues to be good, but their team continues to be bad with their recruiting and everything else. So that is why I just don't like strength of schedule. I'm hurting for our players who have displayed a tremendous amount of resilience and response this season. What happened today goes against everything that is true and right in college football. And he's not wrong. If I was a fan of Michigan, I would stop watching the college football committee. I would stop watching college football as a fan, and I would be done with football, period, for NFL and this, because I think there is too much going on. A team that overcame tremendous adversity and found a way to win, doing whatever it took on the field, was cheated today. It is a sad day for college football. He is not wrong. I'm proud of the work we have put in and the players I have the privilege to coach. We have one more opportunity to defend this 2023 team in the Orange Bowl, and I believe in how our team will respond. FSU became the first team in the history of the college football playoff to go undefeated and win a conference title as a Power 5 team and fail to make the playoff. The Sentinels are expected to play in the Orange Bowl on December 30th at 4 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami versus the number 6 team known as Georgia. That is right here how I feel about the College Football Playoff Committee, how I think that they suck as a committee, and now I'm going to bring up stuff from 10 years ago and more, 25 years ago. And so with that saying, first off, as a result, many seasons ended with split championships in the BCS format. So that's one thing. So with that being said, 1954 and everything else. I'm just going to go through a couple of these. 1954 had a split championship. 1957 had split. 1965 had split. 1970, 1973, 1974, 1978. 1990, 1991. 97, 98 with Michigan and Nebraska. 2003 and 2004 with Louisville and BCS. With that being said, there was other stuff going on that I think is still going on with this. With this and with this whole entire thing, and ultimately so the management for these playoffs is currently done by a committee that determines the best and strongest teams to get into the playoffs. So obviously the strength of schedule stuff I really hate, though. For example, if Michigan were to play hard schedule against Notre Dame, Alabama, and Clemson, would be considered. However, if Rutgers were to play Army, Navy, and Boston College, they would not be considered in the college football playoff. Now, the committee decides whether school makes it or not into the college football playoff, so your record does not matter as much due to other key factors such as the schedule itself and the committee deciding whether you made it or not, which is sad because the committee should not be doing that. They should be deserving these teams, not based off your strength of schedule so much. And here's the biggest thing. There are 10 conferences in Division I football, which is over 100 schools, yet only 4 teams make the playoffs. How the F, as a team, do you only have a 4-team expansion? How do you only have 4 teams? Get it right. It took you 10 years to actually get a national championship format to actually work. And, it's just ridiculous. And, there's other stuff in this that I'm not going to bring up, but the reason that this stuff was not great was because there was also corruption in the BCS format of bribery and everything else. Now, I said 10 conferences, 2 teams from each conference when I wanted to do this. Big 10, 1 and 2. SEC, 3 and 4. Pac-12, 5 and 6. Big 12, 7 and 8. AC, 9 and 10. PCC, 11 and 12, and et cetera, from each conference all the way down to 20 teams, and then determining the seeding based off that. But in this article, it states that the BCS format was bad because there was corruption and bribery into it. Now, do I say that there is bribery and potential cheating and stuff, allegations going on? There is a high chance that there is. Alabama, I've always said, won 7 national championships. I don't believe that they won that many national championships without some cheating going on. It's possible in the Super Bowls to win that many because you can sign a guy for 7 years. It's not possible unless you're developing them very well, or it's not possible because you only keep those guys for 4 years and then they're gone. So there must be some cheating going on. But I got nothing more to say about it. I think Florida State should have been into the college football playoff. I find this humiliating, disrespectful, disproportional, disgraceful, and everything else in between. Fuck you, College Football Playoff Committee. As a football fan and as a Michigan fan, I would be very upset. I'm upset regardless of being a regular college football fan. I am upset with college sports in general. I am a college sports fan more than a pro fan lately because I just can't constantly watch pro sports. After a while, it just gets boring for me. And honestly, the upsets the culture and everything. And that's why I love college sports. I love college basketball. I love college football. And I love the upsets that we get. But unfortunately, it just didn't. The cards were not set. The deck was stacked against Florida State because of losing an injury. And personally, I don't think you should be penalized because your player went down with an injury. I think that if you go 13-0, you should be considered into the playoff. Next year, the committee needs to be fired and a new committee needs to come in and determine it, because you're going to have a 12 team and it's going to be much tougher. You're going to have to say this team deserves it, this team should be in. And personally, I don't think Florida State should have been out of the college football playoff. And if I am someone who has lawyers and stuff on their side, I'm going to go sue the college football committee. I'm going to go talk to them, and I am going to get it overturned, and Michigan should be playing Florida State in the on the January 1st against them in the Rose Bowl. And personally, I just don't think that that's okay for anything. And I personally love to see us play Nick Saban, but ultimately, I think that Michigan should be playing none other than Florida State, and 13-0 teams should be in. Texas should be the fourth team. Bama and Georgia should be out. And unfortunately, we're not going to get that, and it upsets me. And another thing, the reason they didn't put Alabama 5 was because they didn't want to see Alabama and Georgia play each other again. But make them 7 then. Or make Georgia 7 and put Alabama 6 and stuff. And you know, whatever. And put Ohio State, I guess, 5. Who cares? And then put Florida State 4. But it's just disproportional. I'm done with this. I hate strength of schedule. I hate resume. I don't like it. This is why it needs to go. Let me know your thoughts. Until next time, guys, don't forget to stay radical. I'll see you in the next one. Go blue. Hail to the victors. We'll see you on January 1st. That's all I got to say about this.